Everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice little three-game slate on FanDuel for you. We have, just three little games. We really only have two pitchers to really decide on, and one of them is Dylan Case here, who's just been absolutely a good player on FanDuel. If you look at his stats, he's only had three games since July 9th where he's not had 40 fantasy points. And so obviously two of them were here a couple games ago, but he's still making it through lots of innings. Like look at all these 6 and 7 and 9 innings. I feel like he's almost a must start. But if you don't like him, and you may not, then you could go with Sandy Alcantara. He's got a tougher matchup against Philly, and his floor is lower, but he still does tend to get through the lineups, through the innings, and he tends to get some strikeouts as well. I think both players have some viability in this particular situation, but neither one of them are there's not really anybody else that's super ideal, just because most of the other guys tend to not last through the game and stuff like that. So I do believe Nestor Cortez is going to be pitching and not Clark Schmidt, but unless that's changed recently. But as far as I can tell, it's going to be Nestor Cortez, but he is coming off an injury, so you do have to be aware of that. As for the individual positions, I'm going to do outfield first because this is really the only position that's really in a good place. So you have really six people to choose from here, and or seven maybe. No, actually six. Sorry. So you got Aaron Judge, who I'm just going to tell you right now, he's going to be like 85 or 90% owned, and there's literally just no reason not to put him in the lineup. Because, yeah, he's $5,100, but there's really almost nobody else that even comes close to that's above 3,000 by hardly any amount. Like, I think JT Realmuto is at 3,500. He's like the next highest. And then there's tons of guys in the 2,500 range that's going to be viable today simply because of the options that are available. And so if I look at the slate, like even if I have Case, who's the highest pitcher, and put Judge in, we still have 27, 29 per player. We can fit pretty much whoever we want here. Then here's where you're gonna have to make some decisions. So like Bryce Harper or Kyle Schwarber, obviously they're gonna be against Alcantara. Schwarber has been better as of late than Harper has, and so if I was choosing between those two guys, I would choose him. And he's not gonna break the bank either, obviously. And then we have the outfielders for the Chicago White Sox when it comes from AJ Pollock, Robert, and Andrew Vaughn. Now, if Gavin Cheech plays, and he's somebody to potentially use, but he's not expected to play. I expect Vaughn and Pollock to definitely be in the lineup, and then Luis Robert may or may not be, just depends. I haven't seen anything either way on him, to be honest, so I'm not sure exactly what the expectation is, because I think he's coming off an injury and he set out a game or two. So, but if he does play, he's somebody that I'm interested in. But if he doesn't play, it kind of makes it super easy just to not have to worry about anybody other than Vaughn, Pollock, and then one of the Philadelphia Harper, Schwarber. Vaughn has been not as good as we'd like necessarily, but again, in this like limited matchup, he's somebody that's very viable. And Pollock has been playing pretty good, 11.84 the last 10. I really like what he's been doing. He's scoring points, and that's what we like. And so I think he's somebody you just have to consider at the position. There's not really much else here. We got Buxton's hurt. We have Stanton's day-to-day. Castellanos is out. Benintendi's out. You could argue Tony Kemp. I don't hate him at second base, but I don't really love him overall. So yeah, there's just not a ton of not a ton available today. Matt Carpenter's still out. There's just not a whole lot available. So let's go and get into the other positions. So at catcher and first base, I just have a few guys to choose from. So obviously Jose Abreu, he's been hitting the ball really well as of late, and I think he's a home run threat today and a good option. Rhys Hoskins is somebody you could consider, but I would actually prefer JT Realmuto, who's been absolutely just murdering the ball lately. When he has big games, he's scoring, 25, 30 points. He's had some really big stretches too where he's had lots of points. And Hoskins really isn't playing all that well. He's just getting a couple hits occasionally, but I mean he's getting hits almost every game, but he's not getting the power stuff which he had been. And this is going to be a tougher matchup for him simply because of the way that those two guys are batting. But Real Muto has been hotter as of late. But you could also go with Gavin Sheets here if he does play. Like I said, he's not expected to play, but if he does, he'd be somebody I would consider. And also Jose Miranda. I think he's in an interesting spot. He doesn't really project out all that well for me, but he's been hitting the ball pretty well. So, in this limited slate, he's somebody you have to consider. And I also say the same for about Arias. He hasn't been projected very well, but he does hit the ball better. And depending if it's Cortez or otherwise for New York, I think Minnesota is going to have an okay game there. I mean, it's not a great situation for them, but it's an okay one. At second base, it's going to start getting real limited real fast. So, John Berti, if you can, I think he's probably, obviously not a home run threat. He's a very boomer bust option. Somebody you could throw in there. Obviously, Luis Arias, who I mentioned at first base, you could potentially put here. And then, the only other guy really is Gene Segura, but he's been he's been hitting the ball okay in certain games, but then he'll have some duds around it, so you do have to be a little bit careful with him. There's actually another guy that I think is kind of interesting. Obviously, he's not super ideal because he's kind of hit or miss, but he's been hitting the ball well and scoring, 6 to 9 points a lot, and that's Romy Gonzalez for Chicago White Sox. So if he plays, he could be interesting. But if you're going for a White Sox stack, you probably won't be able to utilize him. At third base, it just gets even more limited. Alec Boom is okay. He's been hitting the ball okay. Obviously, again, Philadelphia's going up against Alcantara, which is tough. But John Berti's kind of the boomer bust option at the position, and then Joe Wendell for Miami as well. It's probably one of the better options just for getting like 8 or 9 points. He's got that potential today. None of these guys are home run threats. I wouldn't touch Deji LeMahieu. If Young Makota does start, he could be interesting, but I don't expect him to start. He hasn't been playing. Same with Gio Urosha. He's just, he's been hitting the ball okay, but the matchup for him is not as ideal as it is in some places. At shortstop, we actually have a little bit more to maneuver around here, but it's super not ideal again. Carlos Correa, he's probably the best option. He's gotten some really big games as of late, and so he's a good choice. And you'll probably be able to afford him, most likely. Obviously, Joe Wendell, I already mentioned. And I really wouldn't go too far down, except for Elvis Andrus, who's absolutely been crushing the ball, lately. He's had a couple off games, but he's still got home run potential and just hitting potential lately. He's not been a home run threat most of the year, but he's been hitting great, in the recent amount of time. So overall, I think he's a pretty solid option for this situation. So that's pretty much what I got at these positions. Obviously, you got a utility spot, so you can match people in. If I had to pick the three Chicago White Sox players that I would use, Elvis Andrus would be one, and then Jose Abreu would be one, most likely, and then either one of Robert Vaughn or Pollock. I think that's probably, you're probably going to want to mix in three White Sox with a couple potential with Judge, and then a couple Minnesota players or Philadelphia players. And I don't think you're going to have too much trouble doing that because of the the way that this particular setup looks. So that's pretty much what I have for this video. If you if you play, let me know in the comments below who you like, and if you have any questions or comments or concerns, feel free to leave them below. Shout out to the Patreon people. Appreciate you guys, and thanks a lot, guys. Have a good night.